Oh boy.
There she is.
That was quick. I was like, wow, that's the way to start a show. Son of a bitch. She was here a minute ago. Laura, it's great to have you back.
How did I get into this family? What are my agreements?
Right.
Even for, when I was very young, I would communicate with Eisenhower, and I didn't really realize who he was in the world yet. Then I go to family gatherings and I see all these books and we're talking about this man, and I'm like, whoa, okay. So many downloads are coming in, and with that, okay, now it's time to explore. I was always asking these questions about, the metaphysical. It can't just be disease, right? It can't just be world wars. It can't just be that we catch these things or these events just happen. There's something engineering it. There's something behind it. So we know that there's bioweapons. We know there's geoengineering. We know there's psyops and false flags. So there's that, but there's also energy blocks and the things that are deeply rooted in ancient trauma that we haven't uncovered, that we haven't healed, that we haven't addressed. So there's so much about what is real that needs to be addressed and looked at authentically. Our soul, all that we've gone through for thousands and thousands of years, the galactic history we're not learning about, just our junk DNA, which really isn't junk DNA, and then grapple with all these engineered events that are pushing things upon us that are making us sick. So we're grappling with both the dismantling of what is false and the awakening of what is true.
Yeah, here we are on top of everything else, being polluted by news and nonsense to keep us distracted and looking in the wrong direction.
And that's it right there. Look over here so you don't look at what's really going on.
Yeah.
And there's so much look over here kind of stuff that really pulls people into the divide and conquer. What is truth? And then you got all these smear campaigns and all these different attempts to derail people. And you see within the disclosure community, you can't question this or you'll be banned, or that is the same kind of thing. And I think it's helping people to open up their eyes to the symptoms of the same kind of tactics that we see in society.
Nobody trusts anybody. And those that we're supposed to theoretically rely on, like if I have a cop following me, he doesn't make me comfortable. I'm nervous. So if a police officer is there to protect and to serve, right, I should feel great. I should feel fine having a cop behind me. But are you kidding me? I'm like checking the ashtray.
I don't think it's so much of like either it's black or white.
If we're just looking outside and regurgitating and following and allowing somebody else to think for us, then we're not in control at all. We have no manifestation abilities. That's part of the harvesting and siphoning and the feeding of this inverted system. Now that things have changed, it might not be exactly that, but for some, maybe it still is.
Do you think our souls are slowly being harvested without everything that's going on, to the point where we're no longer the person we should be or could have been?
And I love that question. That just puts it all kind of in a nutshell. I mean, being yanked into these storylines and constant reaction, constant problem, reaction, solution cycles. And if you don't give yourself the opportunity to get to know yourself in the face of adversity and disease more, and you give your power away to pharmaceuticals and things that are just going to manage it for you, that's the opportunities that we're missing out on, that make us very vulnerable to losing our souls, like you said. When those moments happen that provide us an opportunity to see a much larger picture, and we still choose somebody else has to solve it, somebody else has to fix it, then that's a problem. We have no choice to fall back on ourselves. And I don't think that comes from anything but our experience here on this earth, that the life lessons that we learn, the events that happen in our own personal lives. If a doctor says, oh, that's nice, shut up, I'm going to tell you what to do, and you can't say, well, this is what I've observed and I've worked with these herbs, what do you think? If it's not a co-creative process, then it's an enslavement agenda that these well-intentioned people are just regurgitating and enforcing without realizing they're serving the deep state. And then those that buy into it don't realize that they are literally allowing a parasite to vampire off of them, take their money, take their soul knowledge and awareness and capacity to unlock dormant strands of DNA, which to me is what we need to allow. And it's not just a physical thing with DNA, it's consciousness moving beyond the gatekeepers, the frequency fences, and all the limitations that come through trauma events and trigger events.
I was all business when I lived in Florida. I would get up in the morning. It was dark out by the time I got in the car. I'd get home at 6,
Like
7
a
o'clock.
robot.
Yes, I was working my tail off. I was stressed out. I was living on coffee. And then I got my wreck and I had a near-death experience. I was hit by a tractor-trailer truck in Boca coming off an exit. And it changed my life. I was in bed, I woke up 3 days later and I was like, if I can make it. It was the first time I think I ever prayed in my life, except when I was little and had to go to church with my mom on Christmas. It was horrible. But anyway, it was like the first time I said, if I come out of this, I'm going to, be a different person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was the same person, but I was like, God, when was the last time I saw my cousin? When was the last time I did this? When was the last time I actually took a couple of days off just to spend it with family or do something? And I realized that I had become, kind of an emotionless robot. I was just going through the motions every day, and I wasn't happy with myself either, because my body, I think, needed to feel that in return, right? I mean, I think we need to feed off people. You can't be around cold people all the time and be the only one who cares, right? That kind of thing.
That's like the truth, yeah.
So yeah. So I learned a lot, through that time of my life,
Oh, that's incredible. I mean, people thrive in environments where you feel loved, where you feel just a safety of just, I don't know. I was just with my father in hospice. It's just nothing but love. It's like the best place that you could possibly be. Just there's nothing more important than caring for one another, being loving, being supportive, and regardless of what that place is, just noticing that with people, like you said, those that come to you that feel they can tell you anything, they feel safe, versus, a closed off person where you're walking on eggshells. It's not our true nature. The soul is deep, and it's deep feeling, and sensitive. It's aware of all its elements: earth, air, fire, water, ether. There's a greater science, there's a greater physics. Of course, I'm not saying it's just science, but it's the limited science. It's the dead sciences. It's the things that make us paranoid, the things that cause us to not trust our manifestation abilities, or the creative imagination and the miracle vibration and our ability to alchemize and transmute things. What about the alchemical laws of creation? Do we ever learn about that? So I think cold people are super paranoid. Like, if you think differently, and it's just so mechanical.
Them, yeah.
And I remember like feeling into that, like at a time in my life where I was like holding a trauma I didn't want anybody to see. And I had to just function. I didn't have a chance to cry and like just go off and like just process. And I knew that like I was coming across, a lot colder than my normal nature.
Do you subscribe to the idea that abduction and or entities are interested in the human species because of the soul?
What is an enslaved race? The Greys are enslaved by the reptilians or the Dracos. So humans being bioengineered out of their physical DNA are mRNA, where there's genetic changes that separate you more and more from your soul. That person didn't say, oh, I want to be that, I want to become that. They were duped into it. So I feel that along the way, those species later on down the timeline started to abduct or work with humans to regain access to the soul and regain the genetics.
Even a time travel aspect to this to prevent something from happening that could ultimately also change the soulless lives of said extraterrestrials, our ancestors.
So what do you think happens to the soul then if at that point in time? Is it lost?
If you can't transfer your soul, I mean, you'd have to be able to, otherwise there would not be a need for them, right?
I feel you can transfer consciousness, transfer memories, right? In a clone, you can transfer certain things. What about a soul? Okay, well, those that served off planet, their consciousness was operating an avatar body. Was it their soul, or is their soul still with their physical body? I feel it must atrophy though. And what we're talking about and what you're saying, does it like disappear to the point where it's in somebody else's hands and somebody like owns that soul? I mean, I think so, that there are trapped souls. We know that there's trapped souls in the physical plane, ghosts and, even stuck souls and energies and ley lines and stargates and just trapped souls. Do they have consciousness? Do they know that they're trapped? Is there,
Some of them
a
don't.
body being operated by something else, and they're soulless? That's why they're demonically possessed, or their vessel is being used and operated by something else that's in their body instead of them. Where
But
is that
doesn't your
soul?
soul keep memory, just like
Well, I
being
think the soul
reincarnated? I
always
mean,
is going to gravitate towards back to the body. That it's literally like if it were to separate by the laws of creation, it needs to go back home. When we leave our body, when we go into astral traveling,
Sure.
when we dream at night, we're
Astral
kind of out
projection.
of our body. We always come back to our body. But if we're really, really vulnerable and there's a lot of trauma, other entities can come in and that person's like, I can't get into my body. I can't get into my body. But it does have consciousness, right? The soul has to be the consciousness, I guess. So I feel that some of the grays, they need to almost hang around humans to host them until that atrophied soul begins to grow again and they begin to feel again. Is that through abduction and experimentation and taking genetics, or is it just through being a guardian or a guide, where people are having like benevolent encounters? Is that just, or are, I mean, those are all interesting questions. And I've come into like, there's not one answer. Go ahead.
do you think a soul can be cloned?
No, but I mean, that's just me. I mean, like somebody could come on your show tomorrow and be like, "Hey, let's talk about soul
Yeah,
cloning."
right. I wonder because
Yeah.
when we talk about being reincarnated so often, and that soul is, if I'm not mistaken, to be reincarnated, it's really the soul that lives again and again
Yeah.
and again, and yet it loses 99% of its memory, I guess, but there's always that marker. There's that something that triggers and they go, I've been here before, or I remember that, or
Mhm.
and so if
Usually kids seem to remember.
I was just gonna
yeah,
say that.
so
Yeah.
you're being visited, and there's an interest in your soul, and
Whoa.
so something I said. So yeah, so you're having visit. How you? All right. So you're being visited, right? Whether grays or what have you, and there's an interest in your soul, and your soul is actually taken then, and that soul now, does it have all your memories, or is it, once it comes out of your body, is it just really your brain that logs in all the information? Is that why when we're reincarnated we don't remember everything, because it's actually the host body that retains that information? Does that information not go with the soul? But then again, your body and what you've done and the way you've lived is what your aura and what your spirit and how tells how good that of a soul you have. So I can't imagine that there's an interest in all souls, because not all souls are healthy or
Right.
come from a healthy mind. But if your mind is what's driving the soul, when you extract that soul, is there no longer a concern that that soul is tainted by the mind or the behavior of that person?
You're going to remember the significant events that had to do with things that touched your soul. And I feel the soul carries those memories because we do get reincarnated. There are kids, there's a documentary series called The Ghost Inside My Child, kids that have such recall that they have night terrors and they're telling their parents what happened and they find the news stories and blah, blah, blah. And then you have some that are a little bit more unconscious. But I think, a really unconscious person or hybridized individuals that have a certain genetic makeup that have been trauma-based mind controlled, they're being split, right? And their soul is not the authentic soul when they're running a different altar. Where is that soul? Is it still there? Probably. The core energy within you is what is going to drive you to heal and overcome. Why are there survivors of SSP and MK Ultra if that really worked to actually splinter somebody so much where that level of trauma that person was able to recover. And I think that's a really, really strong soul. For those that haven't yet, I feel like that is to come, but they're always going to have their soul having these experiences until it has mastery over these lower forces, that you can't really ever lose your soul. If you have lost your soul, it's only from the body, but you'll have more consciousness within that soul than you will with the physical vessel that's been left behind, because more than likely it's populated by somebody else, or it's being controlled and operated by some demonic, that you won't have memories of what you did. That's why people black out. They murder people. They don't remember anything because they weren't in their body, but their soul is somewhere else. So it's the people, I think the soul leaves and then the physical body's taken over. And then the soul's like, that's what comes back to help heal the person. And if they can stay soul centered enough, they can be like, oh my God, I was mind controlled, or I had a demonic possession. And then the work is to really keep that soul anchored and grounded in the physical vessel for healing. And it's just so fascinating. But I don't think you ever lose your soul. I think your consciousness is more attached to your soul than it is with the body that the soul might have left, because then the body is vulnerable to anything operating it. And the soul is always going to find an opportunity to get into a physical vessel in a new incarnation to maybe, turn it all around. Like you read some past lives, like, oh, that person, murdered a lot of people in that lifetime. In this lifetime, they're like freaking doing yoga and off at an ashram.
Mother Teresa.
Yeah. Oh, but then they're like abusing their followers behind the scenes. Who knows? It's like there's ego and then there's soul. And if the two aren't integrated, you can live very, different lives, and I feel like there's compartmentalism in the ego, because the personality matrix has really disconnected us from soul, and the ramifications of that, like we're talking about, I think people it takes them down a trajectory of being a modified human. We cannot function without our soul. And this is what drives our evolution, our ascension, our ability to switch on what's dormant, to heal, to regenerate, to transform, to come to grips with our wounds, our traumas, and the roots of everything. And our mind can only be smart enough to guide the way. But if it's been damaged, I do feel the soul suffers inside and it's crying inside. And I think there's a lot of people that are imprisoned by their mind and their soul is crying and just wanting help. And I don't think we have the right doctors and psychiatrists, like none of that. It was working anymore. You can't just put them on drugs. They need to retrieve their soul. They need to remember. They need to be taken into that. And so, there's QHHT and all these different methods and tools and modalities and healing centers that I think are going to really replace these infiltrated pillars of our society on every level. I mean, think of how rough mental institutions are. All the different places that a person could go that are troubled, they come out even worse.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you guys?
We're in Tennessee.
Yeah, we're both in Tennessee.
Oh man, well, what an incredible conversation. I love these guys.
No, it was fantastic, because we were like, what do you want to talk about? And before you came on, even actually, you had a couple questions for her, right? You might as well ask now.
Yeah.
While you're on.
I had listened to a couple of your different, like your other podcasts and on YouTube and stuff, and I had a couple questions that came up. One that you mentioned about like the harmonic universe. I was wondering if you could kind of explain that a little bit, maybe break it down for those of us who don't really know what that means.
Oh, for sure. And then, I know we're probably going to close here soon. I got to jump on a thing, but I hope we do this again. I'd love to like open up the conversation, have you guys come on my podcast, because I like talking about these things, and there's so much to learn about
that'd be fun.
You and what you do and your background. Oh my gosh, I have so many questions. But higher harmonic universe is in our DNA. So when you look at junk DNA, that's not junk. If we look at what's 3D, what is a lower harmonic universe? That's where we're at. Dimensions 1, 2, and 3. Then you look at 4, 5, and 6. That's more about the soul. Tara, Tiamat, when it exploded, that fallen system morphed into this lower harmonic universe. And this is where, we just went through a lot of amnesia, after the final Atlantean cataclysm, the Sumerian Egyptian invasion 5,500 years ago, just all these different events throughout time, really separated us from the rest of all that we are. So a higher harmonic universe is usually a grouping of 3 dimensions, and Lyra would be in the higher 4th harmonic universe, the 3rd Gaia, the first harmonic universe, Earth, so I don't have it all memorized, but the 10, 11, 12 would be the Avatar, harmonic universe 4, the cosmic trinity 5. Beneath that, Gaia is 7, 8, and 9. Tara 4, 5, 6, and then this one 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3 is the first, 4, 5, 6 is the second, 7, 8, 9 is the third, 10, 11, 12 is the fourth, and then the cosmic trinity, the fifth, which makes up the 12-strand DNA. So when we look at our 12-strand DNA and that we're functioning at such a low level and we're just in this like lower harmonic universe, it really just is the 15-dimensional time matrix where Lyra being attacked and how it stepped down to the Orion Wars, how Orion humans went with the ethereal Syrians to Tiamat, which then exploded, to then drop us down into this lower harmonic universe, and then having Maldek explode. It's like all these different harmonic universes in our DNA hold all the history of all that we've been through, but it's all dormant. It's all shut down. So when we reactivate it through integration of polarity and hierogamic union and the understanding of the Christos Sophia and the planetary grid network, when it's not in the reversals, really begins to move us into all that. And that's when people start to run into, traumas they can't explain, or anxieties that just, these are all the unseen realms of like aspects of ourselves that have experienced these things, and sometimes people will have a hypnoregression, or, oh yeah, I was in the Orion Wars, or I was on Tiamat when it exploded, or I'm a Lyran and this and that. They're accessing, levels of these higher harmonic universes that are a part of our galactic history. Now there's imposters and, false information at times, but our genetic code and why we can go through some kind of hypnotic regression and begin to access memories of that is because those are the sleeping aspects of ourselves that have been in embodiments where those memories were stored. And we were talking about that with soul, right? And consciousness.
Right.
It's not so much in the computer brain as much as it's in the soul memory, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would think, but so if we're like, are we sort of like trapped in this sort of first level, or like how can we get to that next level?
It's really us. We are the soul.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
We are.
Our mind and our body is an extension, is like the hard drive for it. So when we're removed, there's still something embedded in the soul itself. It may not be where the majority of the memories are and that kind of thing, but it still becomes part of that soul, I think, right? It's the flavor of that soul.
Yeah, totally. I feel the soul needs to inform the physical body to deprogram it, because it is operating from, manipulation and programmings and just not access to the rest of all that we are, that our soul can begin to, awaken us to, versus the soul being shut out. And is that kind of what you're saying?
Our soul is the software and our body's the hardware.
And the two need to work together. And with that integration, that is what I feel awakening is all about. And the ego can be a vehicle for it to express itself through, instead of compartmentalized away from it to the point where it's running the hard, just running what has been taught, what has been conditioned and indoctrinated to be. And the soul creates an event, or the higher mind connected to the soul creates some sort of event to shake that loose. And I feel that that's when, near-death experiences like you had, you're going to be on a level that most people can't comprehend because of what you've experienced, where you've been taken, what you were shown, that you're just not going to get in this normal physical reality. But I love how you put it totally about, the soul. And I feel like on a planetary level, though, the frequency fences, the reversal grid technologies, all the dark tech is being dismantled. I know we're not out of the woods. There's still geoengineering. There's still cities being incinerated by directed energy weapons.
Do you think that there's different levels of souls? Well, now, take Rachel. She runs a ghost hunting, right? What we call ghost running group in the Nashville area, and they're super sensitive. Now, do you think that that's why maybe some people can connect more with a different realm, while others have no concept of how to do that, and they try and they can't?
Right.
To give you an idea, I had somebody come over here with almost like a mini air hockey table, and it had like these goalposts on it, and they put a ball on it, and they amplified the signal from my head, and I was able to move this ping pong ball all over this table. And at first I couldn't do it. I was struggling, like, oh, go, and I was getting all mad because people looking at me like, come on, Thom, I'm trying. Right. But when I just let go and basically just willed it and just pictured it going, and I actually was able to do it. I was able to go through a little circle thing, and I couldn't believe I was doing it, but they amplified the signals to my brain. And for some reason, just like I guess moving a robotic arm or something, I was able to move the
electrical
I'm thinking to
impulses
myself,
or something.
what was that? Was that my brain power? Was that the neurons just firing on, with a little extra power there? Or was that where was that coming from?
Right. With the work that you do, Rachel, and with the experience you had, and I'm sure, just with a lot of the experiences with your NDE, that there's more amplification of abilities because there's more recognition of that part of all that you are. I feel that we all have the same kind of potential, but like anything, you can be an athlete, but have an injury and be stuck in bed and all of a sudden your muscles atrophy, but you're still an athlete. You just have to get back out there and do it because that's the only way you're going to rebuild that muscle. So, think of the times we had advanced lifetimes and then we come back and we're like, this is ridiculous. Like, what is this shit?
To your point, though, I think to your point, my mind and body wasn't working together because I thought I was going to control that ping pong ball in the way that I would normally, or the way that
just
you would
not
think.
letting go.
You're going go, right? You're telling it to go. So are we programmed to function in a way we weren't meant to? Because how I moved that ping pong ball was by doing something totally different than I would have thought would have worked. I didn't think to will it. I thought to demand it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the whole concept of being untaught, everything we thought, just being untaught. You access a part of you that is different than what you thought you needed to do. I mean, there's something communicating and it's, a form of letting go, but perhaps your intent took over because our intent speaks stronger than anything. Sometimes the more we push, the further away the thing that we want gets. But sometimes just holding intent and trust and just letting go is all we need. I think it's extraordinary, and maybe for some others, I mean, if you demanded it and commanded it, you said, right? Or did you say you let go of not demanding it, commanding it?
No, I just kind of gave up almost. And I thought to myself for a while, I can't do it. And I sat back and this younger girl who was here, who brought it over, they came from a center. She said, just wish it, just will it, just, want it to go. Don't tell it to go. Kick back and just picture it doing it. Just let go. And as soon as I did that, it just did it.
I love that. Yes.
It was the craziest thing. And I was like, yes. Right. I was like, I want one of these. These are great for parties. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Because the power of intent then. Well, that's a good one to remember for everybody listening. And the more we maybe don't have faith in something or demand it, or that's why, control freaks, they've lost trust.
Well, that reminded me of something because I'm working with this channeler who talks a lot about, she's kind of working with me to develop my ability, but really the first major thing is like healing before I can even get there. But one of the things that made me think about was that she had said something about you have to unlearn what you have learned.
And we're not really learning the way we were meant to or should.
No.
Oh, that's great. I really love hanging out with you guys.
We'll go on your show.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, well,
absolutely.
We'll definitely create more conversation.
All right. Really quick.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. And
you must still be on your
yeah. Okay.
Your interview.
Doing two at one time.
Yeah, doing two. No, that's a woman when she can do two podcasts at the same time.
I know, that's genius.
All right. Anyway, thank you so much.
Right.
Oh, thank you guys. All right.